Hello, Timeless Gamer Crew. We're talking racing games. Now, being a Sega lad, enjoying my Sega stuff, I was very spoiled for racing games in my youth, growing up with Sega, because they obviously had all the super scalers, such as Hang On, Super Hang On, and the game we're going to talk about, which is my pick for today, and that is obviously the timeless classic Outrun. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Outrun. It was originally released in 1986 in the arcade, and it was developed by none other than Yu Suzuki himself. And it was a game that was actually inspired by the Cannonball Run, because racing games were generally track based. Really, we had like Pole Position and games like that, and Crazy Rider that were very focused on being a racer. Whereas Outrun, they took it across America. They took it as a game where not only did you race against opposition, but you toured the landscape. In fact, that's what Outrun really is more about. It's as much a sightseeing game as it is a racer. It's still very much a racer. It's got it's got a fantastic sense of speed about it, without a doubt, because the sprite scaling that you've got happening when you're playing this game is pretty electric. But you've also got that happening with some great views and just a wonderful tone. That kind of summery, magical vibe, and that, to be fair, Yu Suzuki, when he was researching this, he was very clever. He used it as an opportunity to get himself a tour across Europe in a BMW for inspiration, which is good grifting there, mate. I'm proud of you. But he did try to do America, but they said it were a bit empty and a bit expensive, so he went on to do Europe instead. But it gave us this fantastic game, and being a young kid growing up in the arcades, seeing this bad boy in 1986 was just phenomenal. If you look at the speed of the game, the graphics, and the feel of the game, it would like a game 10 years ahead of its time. We were still playing when games were coming out on your Mega Drive or Super Nintendo. This was still a standard that still wasn't quite touched. Games were getting there, but they still couldn't quite grasp the power and the awe that the likes of Outrun did. And it would just, bear in mind, it was also in a cab as well. And I distinctly remember as a kid, first doing them gear shifts. And it just felt incredible. Wow, I can suddenly drive. Not only am I driving, but I'm driving across America in a Ferrari with a hot blonde babe, which is a great touch. Having that bird at the side of you is such a great touch. And it made this game quite legendary, amongst us kids on schoolyard, because it was just fantastical. I remember one kid who actually told somebody a story that he drove across America in his granddad's Ferrari. It was a known bullshitter, bless him. But I remember hearing that story and basically thinking to myself, "You've just played Outrun, ain't you, mate? You just played Outrun, or you've seen Outrun." But so it were a legendary game, and it came with legendary music too. That vibe I talked about earlier, that wonderful summer vibe. You got, first of all, you got to pick your own tunes, which were just an incredible, it would kind of like mind blowing. I remember people saying when Grand Theft Auto come out that it was so like wild you could pick your own tunes, and I'm like, well, Outrun did that kind of like 10-15 years earlier. But the tunes themselves are fantastic. I'm a magical sound shower, man. I love that song. I think it's fantastic. But they're all great songs, and that variety of being able to pick your own tune made it somewhat replayable, believe it or not. Even though if you raced the same routes, it was suddenly a slightly different experience. And what's so, again, brilliant about Outrun, which were freaking mind-blowing back in 86, was that you had all these routes to choose from. You didn't just race along one path. You could, it was an adventure as much as it was a racing game. You could choose all these routes, all with their own different endings. So when you finally were able to beat the game, you wanted to replay it straight away, because you wanted to see what these other endings brought and what these other routes entailed and what sites you were going to see. So it was kind of mind blowing. It really was. And it obviously got ported to a lot of. God, I can't. I don't think there's been a system that hasn't had a port of Outrun. There will have been some like PlayStation ones and that, but then having said that, you look at the legacy that it's given us, and one of my actual favorite games of all time, as well as this original Outrun, is Outrun 2 and Outrun Coast to Coast. You know what I mean? The drift mechanic that they put in them was superb. I'd probably say that these are my favorite arcade races, and there's a lot of arcade races out there. There's a lot of great races out there. So not only is the original Outrun game fantastic, but the legacy it gave us was superb. So I'd highly suggest you get some Outrun played. I mean, there's so many ways to play it. You got your Switch ports, which are great. I personally play it the most on the Yakuza 0 game, because I think that port, it just, I don't know if they've tweaked it or what, I don't know, but it just feels great to me. It feels really, really great. So a lot of the earlier ports, such as the Master System port and the Mega Drive port, are good, and I really like the Master System port for what it is. But they're not a patch on the arcade original. So that's the one to go for if you're going to try it. I mean, this is a game. You don't have to spend hours on it. You just have to spend. It's good for a good 20, 30 minute go, and you get so much joy in that time. So I would highly recommend, without a doubt. As for driving games themselves, why aren't they that popular? That's a great question, and I honestly think it's a skill issue. Like most things, like most great genres, like shoot 'em ups, the shmups that I love so much, people just aren't that good at them, and they lose interest when they lose. And I think what I noticed about games in general, that they really started to get very easy in the late 90s and early noughties. A lot of harder games, harder style games, suddenly backed off and slacked off. And racing games definitely fell into that genre. Outrun is a great example of a game where if you want to finish this game on one credit, you can't slip up. If you can probably lose a few seconds here and there, but you've got to play this tight. When you crash your car and go flying. Boo! Fly! Like that. And that kind of punishment, I guess, is the word, is just too much for a lot of people. And I think modern racers have admitted that so much. But then what's happened is modern racers have evolved into a more sim-like genre, and I think that's kind of killed it a little bit, because people like me, I want to get. I'm not saying I don't want to customize cars and that. I don't mind pissing about a little bit, but generally speaking, I just want to get some. I want to get a speed thrill. I want to see different routes and size and stuff. I want that buzz. But yeah, I think racing games fall into the bracket of I think people feel that the punishment of them a bit, because if you spend 4 or 5 minutes racing a track and then you lose and you're omitted, people get mardy about it. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing. Racing games are fantastic. Racing games are extremely underrated. And we've basically created a genre of gamers, a generation of gamers who, if there's not a crutch there to support them, to lose interest. And I guess the crutching in a racing game isn't particularly exciting. When you level up in an RPG, it's probably a bit more impactful. You see the numbers rise and that. I mean, I guess you see your speed rise in this. I don't know, but yeah, I'm saying it's a skill issue. I just think a lot of people like easy games that do the work for themselves. Racing games, you can't. You have to stay intense and on it. Outrun, get it checked out if you haven't already, because it's a delicious game and it will forever be timeless.